All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our webinar, Writing for Reputable and Top-Tier Journals. Thank you so much for joining. So in just a moment, we're going to get started with the main event and talk about strategies and techniques to get published in the best journals. But first, I wanted to let you know that this webinar is brought to you by the Journal of Creative Communications, also known as JOCC. I'm Anagha. I'm an editorial assistant at the Journal of Creative Communications. So before we get started with the main session, I would like to invite Dr. Pooja Thomas to open the webinar and introduce JOCC. Dr. Pooja Thomas is an associate editor at the Journal of Creative Communications. She is also a professor and an area leader in the communications area at MICA Ahmedabad. Dr. Pooja Thomas specializes in culture studies with a specific interest in urban studies. So over to you, Dr. Pooja Thomas.
Thank you. Thank you, Anaga. I hope I'm audible. So welcome everybody. I will echo Anaga's very warm welcome here to all our participants. And welcome once again to our facilitator for this webinar, Professor Gary Tan Wehan from Malaysia. Thank you so much, Gary, for leading us through a much needed area of understanding and deep reflection for all scholars about writing successfully for top-tier journals. Could I request someone, there's some background noise, could I request them to put themselves on mute, or if the host could mute them? Yes, thank you. All right, so let me also, before we begin, let me also quickly introduce JOCC, or the Journal of Creative Communications, to you, through which this webinar is being facilitated. So JOCC is a double-blind peer-reviewed journal, which is published thrice a year in association with, published by SAGE in an association with MICA. And for the uninitiated, those of us who may not know what MICA is a premier management school in the Asia Pacific, providing leadership in strategic marketing and communication. Now, JOCC, as we all know, is a strong emergent voice in all broad and related areas of communications research. We are particularly interested in scholarship that provide novel theoretical insights, which provoke new debates in the field of communication inquiry, and even formulate a new language of analysis. The journal is also highly committed to supporting early and young career scholars who are just about finding their feet in the academia. So we all know this, in an increasingly competitive world of academia today, it's vital that all of us find community and support for the kind of work that we do. And this webinar, which has been curated by a fantastic team here, Anaga and Arpit of JOCC, as with all other webinars from JOCC, is in keeping with this tradition of the journal's philosophy of supporting scholarships across the board. In fact, if you look at this image on our slide, you will see that much of what we do is also reflected in the kind of diversity of our authors' origins. Ghana, Indonesia, Portugal, India, Taiwan, not to mention USA, Australia, Colombia, Niger, Spain, Pakistan, Iran. These are some of the countries from which our authors have hailed from, and this is with reference to the last 3 issues that we've published in JOCC. And you can also see that JOCC is particularly invested in supporting work coming out from the global south, and not just from the global north. The impact of the scholarship that we support, that we promote and publish, is evident in our steady progress over the last few years at several indicators. So our site score is at around 2.2 with an impact factor of 1.5. And if you would like to understand more about the journal, please do visit us on the SAGE Publishing website. You can also find us here in the following databases, and a particular mention for Scopus and UGC Care, where we are also indexed. Our latest issue is also now fully available online. It's open access, which means you can also visit us, visit our journal homepage, and access these articles for free for the next 30 days, and I urge all of us who are tuned in to do so. Let me also quickly walk you through our editorial team, a fantastic leadership provided by Professor Manisha Shelat, who I'm representing here because she is away and she's traveling. Manisha is editor of JOCC here at MICA. She's also professor of communication. And we are also joined by our stellar associate editor team who help us do all that we do. As you can see, our editor team is also equally diverse and highly proactive in supporting the work of JOCC. So with that, I will hand it over to Anaga to formally introduce our speaker for today and welcome him once again on behalf of all of us.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Dr. Pooja Thomas. Now I would like to invite our main speaker, Dr. Gary Tanwehan, to take the rest of the session forward and to talk to all of us about writing for reputable and top-tier journals. So a little bit about Dr. Gary Tanwehan. He is a senior professor at UCSI University, Malaysia. He's also a top-cited award-winning academic and reviewer who has received numerous accolades. Notably, he's received the title of the world's 10 most productive and influential authors in mobile commerce, social commerce, and mobile payment for 6 years straight. He is also currently the brand ambassador for Emerald Publishing East Asia and an associate editor at Industrial Management and Data Systems and the International Journal of Bank Marketing. Last but not the least, he's also an associate editor at the Journal of Creative Communications. So thank you so much for being with us today, Dr. Tanwehan. We will now be starting with the main session. We will also have a question and answer session at the end of the webinar. But if you have questions during the session, feel free to drop it in the chat and we will try to answer as many questions as possible at the end of the webinar. Over to you, Dr. Gary Tanwehan. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much, Anaga. So I'm going to share my screen right now. Just give me a minute. Okay. Okay, can you see my screen?
We can.
Can. Okay. Hi everyone. You can just address me as Gary. So welcome to today's webinar on writing for reputable and top-tier journals. Okay, so before I start off, just a very quick introduction about myself. So I'm currently a senior professor at UCSI Graduate Business School. My core research area is actually related to marketing, particularly on consumer behavior on the usage of mobile. So I do a lot of studies, like, for example, in mobile payment, mobile shopping, mobile, retailing, yeah, and so on. Over the years, because I need to supervise students from all diverse areas, I'm also into operation management, supply chain management, and henceforth. So I'm not new to this academic world. I have been teaching for the last 14 years. Okay, so I always tell people, if you have searched for my profile on Google, you see that 14 years ago, I used to have a lot of hair. Okay, but over the years, because we need to publish papers, we work constantly all day, night. I lose a lot of hair. Now, last year, I have published about 29 papers. Out of 29 papers, 26 papers are indexed to SSCI. And out of the 26 paper, 21 out of 26 are ABDC A rank. Yeah, so that was my record for last year. This year, as of August, I have already published about 32 SSCI papers. Yeah, so so this is something about myself. So currently, I'm the brand ambassador for Emerald. I'm also the one of the top 2% scientists according to Stanford. Okay, so let's start off. Now, this is the contents I'm going to cover for today. So I'm going to talk about how to write for a top-tier journal paper. So we are going to start off with this thing called title, abstract, keywords, introductions, literature review, methodology, discussion, implication, and question and answers. All right. Now I'm going to start off. Now, in every paper, it's very important that you need to think about the title. You see, a lot of times, people do not bother about titles. And titles, I always need to stress this. A title for a journal paper is not the same with a title for a thesis. When you write a title for a thesis, usually you need to follow the conventional way. A thesis title should always be boring, like something like a factor influencing an investigation. It's always boring. But when you write it for a journal paper, the title has to be catchy. It has to be very, very creative. Okay, because a good title will capture, number one, the editor's attention, and of course the reviewer as well. And good title always leads to download, leads to citations, and henceforth. Now, very important thing is, number one, when you want to think about title, okay, a title has to reflect your paper. So what do I mean by a title has to reflect your paper? So for example, if I look at a title, something like NFC mobile credit card, the next frontier of mobile payment, then I would assume that this paper has to be related to NFC, it has to be related to mobile, it has to be related to credit card, or it has to be related to mobile payment. So title must reflect your paper. Okay. Now, number two, if possible, please avoid using abbreviations unless it is a very well-known abbreviations that people know about it, that is fine. Otherwise, don't use it. Now, the key question here is this: how can you find a catchy title? It's easy to say that, you should think about a catchy title, but how do you actually find a catchy title? I always say this. Number one, if you want to use a catchy title, okay, number one, my suggestion is take a look at journals. Most of the journals, for example, they will have this category called most read, or even most downloaded, or even most cited. Take a look at those sections, see how the titles are being crafted. Okay, so I repeat, take a look at those sections in journals like most read, most downloaded, most cited. Look at how those titles are being crafted. Because if your paper can be most cited, if your paper can be most downloaded, definitely your title is unique. So that is one way for you to identify. Yeah. And number two, I always say that it is good if you are able to read these practitioner journals known as Harvard Business Review. Yeah, so Harvard Business Review is a very top tier ranked journal. Is a practitioner journal. So look at how those titles are being crafted. They are always very, very catchy. Okay, something like this. It's time to tie bank profits to customer financial health and so on. How to get employees report their COVID-19 risk. Do it in that way. Okay. Another way for you to come up with a catchy title is to follow the newspaper method. It will never be wrong. Okay. So you see, sometimes, right, when you look at the news, the title is very catchy. You just want to read what this title is all about. So using newspaper title is another good way of coming up with a catchy title. I give you a good example of a catchy titles. Many years ago, I was running a webinar, I was running a workshop related to grant. Yeah. So we were talking about coming up with a catchy title, and one of the groups suggested on this very beautiful title, and I really like it. Is something related to tourism. It is something like this: Ghosts for Sale? Question mark. The dark side of tourism. So I told myself, yeah, if even I'm not interested in tourism related studies, but ghosts for sale, can you really sell ghosts? This is something really catchy. And I told myself that if I see such paper, I would want to download and read. Yeah. So remember, okay, the key bottom line that you need to take away from this part of title is your title got to be catchy. Okay, the title should not be those boring title like a thesis, a study, an empirical analysis and investigation. Those are really boring. Please avoid those kind of titles. Yeah. Come up with catchy titles. How do you get catchy titles? You can either refer to a newspaper, you can follow the Harvard Business Review, a practitioner journal style, or you can take a look at those most read, most downloaded, most cited, and so on. The idea is very simple. If a paper can be most downloaded, If a paper can be most cited, if a paper can be most read, definitely, it has something unique. So look at how those titles are being crafted. Okay. Now according to Emerald, they say that a good catchy titles, usually they have shorter length of words. Yeah. I don't exactly agree. To me, so long it is catchy, that will be good enough. All right. Okay. Now that you have a very catchy title, so what is the next most important thing? Now, the next most important thing basically is on your abstract. Okay, because most editors, yeah, or even reviewer, if they like your title, they will start to read your paper. And what's the first thing that they do before they start reading? They look at your abstract. So what's your abstract is all about? Now, the issue here is as a reviewer, I realized that a lot of times people do not know how to write an abstract. An abstract. Now, in the first place, what exactly is an abstract? So, an abstract is a summary of your entire article. So, imagine if your article is about 12,000 words or even 13,000 words, an abstract could be about 400 to 500 words. Yeah, a summary of your entire paper. Now, the first few things that you need to remember when you write an abstract, okay, it has to be unique. Okay, it has to be self-contained. It should not include any references. It should not have any tables, figures, and so on. And as like your title as well, it has to be consistent with what you have reported. So, like for example, if you mention about this study is supported or not supported, then in your abstract, if you mention that in your abstract that this study is supported, then in your article, it has to be supported. Yeah, it has to be consistent. All right. Now, the key thing here is this. How do you really write a good abstract? Okay, because writing a paper is easy, very easy. But how do you summarize a whole paper into 400 to 500 words? Now, I always tell people, if you do not know how to write an abstract, okay, the best way of writing an abstract is to follow the Emerald format. So this is an example of what I call an Emerald format. So an Emerald format, okay, number one, you have purpose. Okay. Number two, you have your design, methodology, and your approach. Number three, you have your findings. Number four, your practical implications. Okay, it could also be your theoretical implications. And the final one is the originality and the value of your paper. So what you do is you write in this format, just group them together in an abstract. So that is what we call a very, I would say that this is the best way to write an abstract. Okay, coming to this. So how do you, so you can refer to some of my papers on how we write our abstract. So purpose generally is about what's the objective of your research. Okay. Design, methodology, approach could be your design of your research, cross-sectional, or whether you are using experimental method, or you are using data analytics, or you're using those newer approach like study one, study two, and so on. Yeah, and so on. You can also describe about your theory. Okay, your theory. Later on, I'm going to talk about the differences between a grand theory and a middle range theory. Yeah. So you can also talk about your theory in your methodology section, and also on your finding is what have you discovered, okay, from your research. Yeah. And so on. And originality is so what makes your study so unique. Okay. So the whole idea is to write an abstract. It's not difficult. Okay. You just need to follow this structure, and you cannot be wrong. All right. So I've given you some good examples of writing an abstract. Now, in terms of the word counts for abstract, is very much depending on the journal. Okay, because some journals abstract could be like about 200 words. Some journals abstract could be about 500 words, 400 words, and so on. So you must always refer to the author guidelines. All right. Okay. So what is next after your abstract? Now, the next thing, very important, is your keywords. Now, I tell you, I cannot emphasize how important is keywords. Why? Because many times people don't bother about keywords. Probably they only will think about keywords when they start to submit the paper and the paper asks, can you put in, the 5 keywords for your paper? And they start filling up, what are those keywords? But you need to think about your keywords. Now, why keywords are important? Keywords are important for 2 particular reasons. Like for me, for example, when I handle papers, sometimes I might be handling papers which is not specifically in my area. I may not understand that work that well. So what I do is I look at the keywords and I search reviewer based on the keywords. So keywords help me in terms of identifying potential reviewers. Yeah, that's number 1. Number 2, keywords is important because if you use the wrong keywords, people will not be able to discover your article. I give you an example. If you write works, papers, something like online banking, for example, okay, you're doing research related to online banking. Now ask yourself this very simple question. What kind of keywords people will use when they search for articles that are related to online banking? Some of you will search online banking. However, some will actually use electronic banking. Some of you will search mobile banking. Some of you will use e-banking. Some of you will use i-banking. Yeah, so you can see different people will use different keywords when they want to search article that is related to online banking. So if you use the wrong keyword, then your article will not be discovered or people would not be able to find your keywords. So it's very important that number 1, you must, I always tell people, maximize your keywords. If, for example, in an article, they ask you to key in 10 or 11 keywords, maximize your keyword because you do not know what are the words that people are using for to search. So for me, I use this in order to identify what are the popular keywords. Sometimes I like to look at bibliometric studies because sometimes bibliometric studies, specifically in your area, the author will tell you that, oh, I have searched based on these keywords and these are how many papers that will appear and so on. So from you get an idea that these are popular keywords. Like for example, in the choice of using online banking or internet banking, yeah, they do have this kind of information. Or if you are familiar with Google AdWords, yeah, you can use that as well. Or you can do something like this. Journal databases like IEEE, they do have popular keywords. Like for example, what are the hottest keywords that people are searching for in the last 2 to 3 months? And I tell you, if you are able to align your work with those popular keywords, I can tell you the chances of your paper being discovered will be even higher. So don't underestimate the power of keywords. Now, if you actually gone through my profile, right, you'll realize that I have received awards in terms of downloads, yeah, citations, because we spend a lot of time thinking about keywords. I give you an example, yeah. Many years ago, we did a paper related to cloud computing. So cloud computing is technically a very boring topic. Now, 4 or 5 years back, right, the hottest research area at that moment was something related to I can't remember what's the word. Industry revolution. Yeah, sorry. The word is industry revolution 4.0, something like this. So I remember I saw this industry revolution as part of the popular research area at that time. So what we did was we actually aligned our work with that keyword. So we use the word like industry cloud computing, is this the next industry revolution 4.0, something like this, as part of our title and as part of our keyword. So that paper eventually got accepted and the paper received a lot of downloads because industry revolution about 4 to 5 years ago was one of the hottest keywords. We found this in IEEE database. Okay, so key thing, use the right keyword and the chances of your paper will be discovered. And very important, yeah, When you look at title like this, the interactive mobile social media advertising, an imminent approach to advertise tourism products and services. Now, ask yourself, if you are going to look for an article that is something like this, what are the kind of keywords are you going to use? Will you think about using a keyword called mobile social media advertising? Or will you use the word like, online, social media, and so on? Now, sometimes if you do not know what is the actual keywords, the whole idea is very simple. Break it. Break it means you can use social media as one of your keyword. Advertising as second keyword. Mobile social media could be your third keyword. Tourism product could be your another keyword as well. So break it. Yeah. So the chances is your paper will be discovered. All right. So as mentioned, do not underestimate the power of keywords, because if you use the right keyword, chances is people will be able to find your article. And I said before, if given a choice, given like, for example, you're given 10 to 15 options to fill in the keywords, please maximize your keyword. Okay, try to find out what are the popular keywords that people are using. Make sure you put that in your work. Now, we have talked about titles. Yeah, we have talked about abstract, and we have talked about keywords as well. So what's next? Now, assuming if an editor likes your work, okay, very good title, very good abstract. So what's next? Introduction. Now, introduction plays a very important role. Why do I say that introduction plays a very important role? You see, the impression whether the paper will be accepted or will be rejected is very much based on your introduction. I always tell people, no matter how well you write, in the subsequent chapters, if in your introduction, the way that you write sounds so lousy, the perception is that I'm going to reject your article. It will be there. But if you write a very good introduction, but subsequent section, it may not be that good, the perception is, somehow people still feel that, okay, I'm going to give you a chance. So my say is this: introduction is very important. Okay, you need to ensure that you give the right kind of perception, yeah, to the authors, to the readers, the editors, and so on. Now, I always say this: writing an introduction is actually not difficult. Okay, I'm going to show you a few style of writing. Now, before I start off by further, explaining to you about introduction, let me tell you a story. When I started my career 14 years ago, I was very new to this academic world. And I was very fortunate that I have a very good supervisor, Professor Ui. Yeah. So, he told me that, Gary, let's go for a conference. So I said, okay. And I asked him, what do you do in a conference? He said that, oh, in a conference, you pay money, okay, and you present a paper and you get shoot by people. And I was like, you pay money to attend something and get shoot means people throw you questions, and hoping that, you are able to answer them and so on. So I said, like, okay. So I said, this is what academicians do? He said, yes, that's what conference is all about. So I remember I attended a conference with him. So the conference was in Bangkok, Thailand. Okay. Now, this is very interesting. When I was in that conference, he pointed to me and said, hey, Gary, come here. So I went there and said, yes, prof. Then he told me this. There's this person standing at the corner. So I said, okay, who is he? He said, that is a very famous editor-in-chief. So I was like, oh. Then he said, it's an Elsevier editor. So I said, okay. So yeah, so you tell me he's an editor. So what's next? So he said, go and talk to him. You see, when 14 years ago, I used to be very, very shy, when you ask me to talk to another person, like, ew. So I was like, talk to him. Then my supervisor said, yes, go and talk to him. Go find a topic. He said that this is called conference, networking, having conversations with all those big personality and so on. So, okay lah. Since my supervisor said I have to talk to this very famous editor-in-chief, I went and talked to him. So I said, hi, prof, how are you? So to my surprise, the editor, was so kind. He was so nice. He said, "Oh, how are you?" Then I said that I introduced myself, and I told him that I am very new to this academic world. Okay. I said that, I've just started. So he asked me a very simple question. Have you published a paper before? So many years ago, 14 years ago, I did publish a paper before, but it was only a Scopus Index journal. Yeah, a Scopus Index journal, because back then we don't really understand about quality of journals. We just know, yeah, this is a journal. We don't even know whether it's a high quality or bad quality journal. So back then, so I have a Scopus Index journal. So this editor asked me a very important question. Do you know what is the index which is higher than Scopus? I was like, index higher than Scopus. Then I asked him, is it ISI? So long time ago, Clarivate Analytics, which I think all of you should know, is formerly known as ISI. They call it Thomson ISI. So a lot of those very, very old professors, they still use the word ISI. Yeah, today it's called Clarivate Analytics. So he said, yeah, it's ISI. So I said, yes, I know ISI. Then he told me, okay. Then he asked me this, what do you want to learn? What do you want to ask? I say, I want to know how to write a quality paper. So he asked me this important question. Which section do you want to know? So I was saying that, okay, I want to know about introduction. Yeah, because introduction, like what I say, is important because it gives the editors, the reviewer, the whole impression about your work. So he said, okay, you want to write about introduction. Okay, so when he asked me this question, do you know what is the index higher than Scopus? So I said, yes, ISI. Then he said, good. Then he said, I'll tell you. Oh, when he said, I will tell you, I was so happy, really happy, because this is a very important editor, very famous editor. He's going to tell you a secret, So I told him, Prof, please wait. Wait. Don't tell. Let me go back to my seat. Let me bring a piece of paper and a pen. I need to write down your secret. So I went back quickly. I took a pen, I took a paper, and I came back. Okay, so I hold the paper and the pen, and I said, start. You know what this professor told me? He said, Gary, okay, the first thing you do, well, I was very excited. The first thing you do, okay, go back home, is to download one paper, which is higher rank than your published paper. So I published in Scopus. In other words, he said that I should download a paper higher rank means ISI. So I said, okay, when he said this, I stared at him for a while, okay, and to wait for him to complete his sentence. He said, go back, download the paper, which is higher rank than your previous published paper, okay, and read the introduction. And 1 year, you have 365 ways of writing an introduction. After that, I listened to this professor. I was like, I do not know whether I should continue writing or I should, stop writing, because it sounds to me like, I don't know. It sounds like, are you fooling me, or are you trying to trick me, and so on? Because, it's the Asian mentality. Like when I ask you to tell me a secret, I'm really hoping that you tell me a secret, not telling me that, you should read an introduction a day. And after one whole year, 365 ways of writing an introduction. It sounds to me like, I was looking at him, trying to see whether is he laughing, or is he trying to, like joking, like joke with me. But he sounds very serious. So I say, okay, thank you, Prof. And I went back to my supervisor. So I told my supervisor, hey, this famous professor told me that if I want to write a good introduction, every day I need to read one paper, which is higher rank than where I have published. And 1 year, I have 365 ways of writing an introduction. I asked my supervisor, is he joking? My supervisor looked at me and say, Mr. Tan, okay, you are very new to this academic world, okay? You do not know. If this top professor can tell you this, of course he is serious. And then he told me, you should, have an open mind, okay? Don't have, don't be like those close-minded people, He said, why don't you just give it a try? Because he's a famous professor. Well, famous professor, if they can tell you this, there must be a certain logic behind it. So, okay lah. 14 years ago, very new, very fresh. Actually, I don't even know what this academic world is all about. So I said, okay, doesn't matter. I always believe in this principle. In life, you try something. If it doesn't work out, there is always nothing to lose. Yeah. So I said, okay, fine. I go back and give it a try. So I went home after my conference. Yeah, I went home. I download a paper and I read that introduction. Next day, I read again and again and again and again. After I read for the 3-4 months, right, I still cannot see the logic. I really cannot see the logic. And my supervisor asked me, have you learned how to write an introduction? I say, no. Every day I'm reading just aimlessly. I can't really see anything unique from just reading the introduction, apart from, reading different topics, and so on. But I can't see anything. And one day, I don't know how to explain to you. I was like sitting, like this, sitting, doing my work. Suddenly, it's like I feel that there is a light shining on top of my head, like a light, like a God shining the light on your head. Wow. Suddenly, I look at the introduction. If I use my hand, okay, imagine there is 3-4 paragraphs. I use my hand to cover the second, the third, and the fourth paragraph. I would know what is the paper is going to be about. It means that I would know what is the next section about, what is the third section, what is the fourth section about. It's like suddenly I have the ability to predict what the paper, second, third, fourth, fifth paragraph, even I have not read that paper. Suddenly the light, like a God light. And then I began to say, every paper has a pattern of writing. I began to realize every introduction has a pattern. Of course, the way that you write, if you have a better grasp of English, you write better. But the fundamentals, the structure of writing is always the same. Saw that. I'll give you an example. When you write a paper, like you are doing a paper related to mobile payment in India, okay? You will never start with mobile payment in India. It's always wrong. You should always start with the word big picture. You need to describe to the world, to us, to whoever that's reading, what is this mobile payment and how is this mobile payment, getting on around the world. That's the big picture. And then you move funnel approach to a smaller picture. Smaller picture means the scenario of mobile payment now in India. So you see, there's always a big picture and they move to the next paragraph, which is in India context. Okay. And the next thing is they will always say that, okay, so why this research is important. Okay. And more importantly, they will also talk about the problem. What is this gap? Okay, why this study, has an issue? Why warrant us to do this study? Now, when I talk about gap, right, it's very important, especially if you are doing empirical research. You're doing quantitative research. Your gap, okay, has to be related to your model. A lot of times, the way that people write the gap is very surface. Like, for example, arguing that studies have been done throughout the world, but no one has ever done this study in India. That is not a good research gap. Okay, we want to know how this gap is related to your model. Like, for example, if in your model, if you are using construct, like, for example, trust, T-R-U-S-T, then tell us, what is this issue about trust? Yeah, so you must be able to link that problem to your model. So like you argue in this way, like in India, okay, like for example, according to the newspaper, Indian consumer do not trust online buying. Yeah. And then you say that this is weird. Why? Why is it weird? Because the government, has introduced law to protect those consumer if they got cheated. Retailers have guaranteed one-to-one reimbursement if anything happened to you. So everything is there, but still, why you do not trust online shopping? So that is a kind of gap we want to see, and that gap has to be linked with your model. So I can tell you, as an editor of journals, I often see that people write their gap in a way that is very surface, like people don't do it. That's why I want to do this research. That's not a good gap. You need to dive in to link your gap and your model. So that is a very important thing. Yeah. And of course, you need to talk about your purpose, what is the objectives of your studies, and henceforth. So you can see, if you read more of this introduction, you will realize that every paper has this similar pattern of writing. You can never go wrong. It's just that the style, of course, is very different. Now, over the years, in my school, we emphasize a lot of these quality journals, like those journals that are linked with ABDC. So of course, you know that if you want to publish in ABDC A rank or ABDC A star journals, it's not easy. Yeah. Or similarly, if you want to publish in the All Business School ABS ranking journals like level 4, 4 stars, it's very difficult. So there was a time where we need to push ourselves, to write in those kind of quality journals. And I always tell myself this very important concept. If you do not read quality journals, you will never write quality papers. If you read poor quality papers, you will write poor quality. If you read poor quality papers, then your writing is also going to be very poor quality. So I told myself, okay, can I use back the same kind of method where 14 years ago, this professor asked me to read the introduction, and then and see whether I can find a certain pattern. I did that, okay? But this time, what I did was I did it very differently. Instead of just reading an article, I told myself I should read a journal which is ranked higher than my SSCI journals, those that are ranked A and A stars, for example. So after reading those A and A star journals, okay, I began to discover, oh my God, it's like another light shining on top of me, okay? I realized, wow, there is another pattern of writing. I was like, my God, this is how you should write. And now I understand why top papers, why some papers can get into these top journals, because they have a style of writing which is very unique, but it's not something difficult to follow. I give you an example, okay? I just give you one example, just one example. Let me ask you this question, okay? Do you know what is gravity? Very simple question. What is gravity? So gravity, if you take something, you throw up, it will fall. That's gravity. Now imagine you write this in your introduction. You say, gravity is something that you throw up, eventually it will fall. Okay. Now, in your next sentence, you write this. However, in India, gravity doesn't work that way. In India, if you throw anything up to the sky, it will disappear. Now, imagine you write this in your introduction. The readers, the editors, or even the reviewer will ask you, are you sure that if you throw anything in the sky, it will not fall back? They will want to continue to read and read and read to really see how true is this study of yours. So you hook them, into your work. So what I'm trying to say is that I began to realize that, a lot of papers, instead of writing like, what is your gap, they will talk about the problem of a theory, how this theory is in a real world, it happens that way, but in a real reality, it doesn't work that way. So you try to argue from that perspective. So this is just one example. If you continue to read good papers, you'll realize that there are multiple methods of writing your introduction. That is always a pattern. Okay, so my takeaway to all of you is, number one, remember, introduction is like the heart of your paper. If you write a good introduction, the impression is like, I'm going to accept your paper. Yeah. But if you write a bad introduction, no matter how well you write in your subsequent chapters, people will have that impression that I'm going to reject your paper. So please put in more emphasis, yeah, in terms of your introduction. So I've given you some technique, yeah, to follow. Okay, next, literature review. Now, let me ask you a very simple question. What is a literature review? Now, a literature review is a very simple thing. Basically, it means that it is okay. It is a review of past studies that are related to your work. Okay, literature review is a review of past studies that are related to your work. Now, when you talk about literature review, there are two important things that you need to put that in. Number one, you should have a past studies that are related to your work. And number two, it should have theory. Okay, let me emphasize again. A literature review should have two things. Number one, it should be something, past studies that are related to your work. Anything about this past study, no problem. And the second thing is about theory that is related to your work. And let me tell you something. A lot of good journals, okay, to be very honest with you, whether you can scrap through that journal or whether you pass through and get the paper accepted, very much depends on your theory. Okay, and you must use a grandiose theory rather than a middle range theory. I'll talk about that later. All right. Now, before that, let me ask you this very simple question. Imagine you are a student, okay, and you are going for your viva, your final stage of your doctorate defense, and someone asks you, "Are you an expert in your topic?" Of course, you said yes lah. If you said no, you're not an expert. They will ask you, "Thank you. Yeah, come again when you are an expert." Yeah. So okay, the key thing is, assuming you say yes, I'm an expert in my topic. Let's say they ask you, okay, so what is your area? So you say, oh, my area is to tourism. Now, the first question examiner would ask, can you tell me what are the top 5 journals in your area? Let me throw this question to you right now. All of you, okay? Some of you, you are in your own field. Doesn't matter whatever field. Can you tell me the top 5 journals in your area? Okay? If you can tell me, very good. Now, the next question is, can you tell me who are the top 5 authors in your area? Very important question. Why I ask this question? Because if you really do not know the top journals in your area, or even who are the top authors in your area, it basically means that you do not know your work. And I can tell you many times, for me, as an associate editor, or special issue editors, the first thing I do, I don't need to read your paper. Seriously, I don't need to read your paper. Just by looking at your references, how you cite your references, I already know whether you are someone means you are a person who will have knowledge in terms of writing, or you are someone who doesn't have any knowledge. Because people who have no knowledge in writing, the way that you cite, you are going to cite predatory journals, you are going to cite problematic journals, you are going to cite poor quality journals. A good researcher will never cite these kind of papers. So always remember, one of the reasons why paper always get rejection is because of your references. You do not know how to cite. So it's very important that you need to know what are the quality journals in your area. Okay, so we'll talk about that in a short while. Now let's come back to this. Now take a look. Now, when we talk about journals, okay, now of course, you have this is something that I draw myself. I call this the pyramid of indexes. Okay, now in your pyramid at the top, okay, you have this Actually, it's not Web of Science. It should be Clarivate Analytics. Yeah, Clarivate Analytics, you have about 19 indexes. And not all indexes in Clarivate Analytics are valuable. Like for example, zoology, biosys, preview, they are not to say they are not valuable, but the key thing is that they are not used for world ranking. The only indexes that are used for world ranking, okay, under Clarivate Analytics are those that are linked with WOS. So WOS are SSCI, SCI, SCIE, and AHI. Okay, SSCI means Social Science Citation Index, Arts and Humanity Index, Science Citation Index, Science Citation Index expanded. Yeah, previously AHI has no impact factor, but today AHI has impact factor. So in other words, the whole WOS has impact factor. Now, this WOS is at the top. Okay, below WOS, you have this thing called Scopus. All right, and below you have international journals like Cabell, Cyrus, and so on, and of course non-index journal. So the idea here is, if you want to cite papers, you should never cite anything below that Scopus. To be very frank with you, because journals that international journals, they don't really have great values. Yeah, try to cite Scopus and above. All right, and of course, different indexes are linked with different world ranking. Yeah, like for example, Scopus is used for QS world ranking. Yeah, WOS is used for THE World University Ranking. Yeah, so you know that if a university put more emphasis on Scopus, then the QS ranking will go up. Yeah, if they put more emphasis on WOS journals, then the THE World Ranking will go up. All right. So this is about the indexes of journals. All right. So long time ago, I think I remember many years ago, my former university was ranked top 100 in THE. Yeah, THE World University Ranking. Yeah, because they put a lot of emphasis on WOS. Now, the story goes in this way. Actually, when you talk about world ranking, there are many different kinds of world ranking. You have QS, THE, Shanghai Jiao Tong rankings, and so on. Long time ago, the ranking started with THE World Ranking. I always remember, yeah, as I said, my university, was ranked. Then there was this case. Many journals, European journals, like for example, those from a very established country, they tried to apply for their journal to be indexed to WOS, but it was rejected. It was rejected. And they were very angry because these are very established journals from a very reputable university, but it got rejected. So they were saying that it is like a manipulation because at the time, Clarivate Analytics ISI is an American-based company. So they are saying that if you are able to control this, then definitely you'll be able to control the world ranking. Yeah, you can ensure that universities in the United States, score better, compared to the rest of the world. So a lot of these European universities were very unhappy, and that's where they actually grouped together and they came up with their own ranking, and they called this the QS ranking, and they use this Scopus as part of their ranking. Yeah, so you understand. So Scopus is very much based on European. WOS, Web of Science, is very much an American-based ranking. Yeah. Okay. So I already mentioned that a literature review is a review of past studies that are related to your topic. Okay. So a review of this past studies that are related to your topic, you have to have two things. Number one, discussion of past studies, and theory. Now I'm going to start off with theory. So what is this theory about? So theory, basically in a simple English, is like something that can explain a phenomenon of why something happened. Okay, just like I gave you an example of gravity, yeah, for example. Now, let me tell you something. A lot of top papers, yeah, they are looking for grand theory and not middle range theory. Now, what is grand theory? What is this middle range theory? Let me give you an example of middle range theory first, because middle range theory is very straightforward. It's very easy to understand. So middle range theories are theories which they have construct. Okay, they have construct, something like this, and you can use a construct to guide you in your explanation. Like for example, technology acceptance model, theory of planned behavior, and so on. So, for example, why people for example, why what forms intention? Yeah, is because of attitude, and attitude is formed through usefulness and ease of use, and etc. So you can use the kind of variables to actually explain something. So in summary, a middle range theory is a theory with construct. Okay, theory with construct that can guide you in explaining that phenomenon. Now, what is a grand theory? A grand theory is a theory that doesn't have any variables to guide you in your explanation. Basically, a grand theory is a concept that can be applied in any situation. Like, for example, I give you an example of gravity. So gravity, you cannot really draw something, yeah, to represent gravity. Okay, it's like a concept. Okay, so gravity is something that you throw, eventually it will fall. So you can use gravity to apply in many situations. Like, for example, if there's a comet flying near to Earth, what happened? Based on the gravity theory, likely the meteoroid or the asteroid will hit Earth. Or if you decided to jump down from the building, what happened? I know you will die. Why? Because theory, gravity says that you will be pulled and you'll be dead. So you can see gravity, a grand theory is a concept. You need to understand the concept, okay? And if you understand the concept, you can actually apply in your work. And let me tell you the biggest secret of research. Biggest research secret. Yeah. You know, only for today's webinar, all right? The secret is you want to do well and get your papers through good journals, you must use grand theory. You must not use middle range theory. Middle range theory is a very simple theory. I tell you, a lot of researchers, what they like to do, they like to combine, you know, theory A, theory B, like technology acceptance model, theory of planned behavior, bang, bang, this is my model. You cannot go far. No matter how well you write, these kind of theories are not good enough. You need to have a grand theory, a theory that can just explain everything of your work. It's not easy. In order to get good grand theory, you need to read quality papers, A-star journals and so on. If you read those poor quality journals, you normally will find middle range theory. I'm not kidding with you. It is true. You can go back and take a look. Yeah. I give you a very good example of a grand theory. Like, for example, social exchange theory. Okay. So let's say, for example, we are doing a research. Why today, you know, you are attending a webinar? Yeah. Why some people, you know, PhD students, you know, they are not attending this webinar. So you can use this theory called social exchange theory to explain. So how do you describe social exchange theory? So social exchange theory is basically about how the benefits versus the cost. So someone do certain things, okay, because the benefits associated with it is probably more than the cost. So, like, for example, why do you actually, you know, attend a webinar? Maybe because, you know, you gain knowledge, you know, you gain something that can help you in your thesis, you know, in your careers and so on. So in other words, if in your model, okay, if you draw a model and you say that, you know, someone attends this workshop for one reason, because it's useful, you know, because it helps in terms of their career, then you describe that this is based on the theory called social exchange theory. That kind of writing, I mean that kind of linkage is the one that most editors want to see, okay, because you are able to link your model, okay, with the theory, okay, and the theory can actually describe you're doing something like benefits, usefulness, you know, and etc. Now, the other thing about theory which I like you to take note is that over the years, okay, as an associate editor, I realized that sometimes you need to use the right theory, okay, because sometimes some people, they use theories that are related to organization and they put this in consumer studies, and I always tell this is a no-no. You should always use if let's say you're doing studies that are related to organization, then the theories should always come from organization theories. Don't ever use a consumer theory to be applied in an organization perspective. And similarly, don't apply, if you're doing consumer studies, don't apply organizational theories in an consumer studies. It's wrong. Okay, stick with your actual theory. If you're doing consumer, use back consumer theory. If you're using organization, stick back with organizational theories. Very important, because I often realize that people always use this wrong concept. Okay. Other thing about theories is I always like to say about this. Okay, when you talk about theories as well, okay, you see, theories is not just entirely about telling people what is it about. You see, a good paper, when you write a literature review, people always have the impression that I should be just writing what is it about. No, writing a good theory or your literature review is also about, putting your own voice, giving your own thoughts and so on. So try to do this. Okay, when you write a theory in your paper, try to criticize the theory as well. Why this theory has weaknesses, and so on. That is like putting a voice, okay, in your work. Okay, and it's also very important that when you write a theory, think about this. Theory is, a lot of time people like to talk about the what I use the word, the past of the theory. Like, for example, they are writing about technology acceptance model. So they say that, oh, TAM comes from theory of reason action. It comes from theory of planned behavior, how it evolved to TAM. And then they say that, oh, now maybe TAM, you have TAM2, TAM3, and so on. Okay. Now, what I'm trying to say is that when you write a theory, don't just write about the past. Write about the future. How is the theory today? What kind of studies, like, for example, meta-analysis that have been done using that particular theory? Talk about the future of the theory. So when a reader read your paper, I can see a very big concept of your theory from the past to the current thing. That is a very, very good writing of a theory. From the past to the future. Don't just tell me about the past. Okay? And also, don't just tell me what the theory is about. Tell me about the description of the theory. So it's very important that, sorry, not description, the limitations of the theory. Okay, so it's very important that you pay attention to this, yeah. And sometimes, right, I need to also emphasize this. This is really based on experience as well. Sometimes there are certain frameworks, popular frameworks, that authors like to use. I give you examples like SOR framework. Okay, what stimulus, organism, response, or what TOE framework, technology, organization, environment, and so on. Yeah. Now, when you write this kind of framework as part of your theory, I often realize that people make mistakes because they write the framework and they talk about the different kind of studies that have been done using this framework SOR. And you use that to argue that this is a theory. That is wrong. Because you need to argue it from a viewpoint that this is a theory. Because some framework can be a framework, some framework can also be a theory. So when you write your literature, you need to write it as if like it is a theory. So you need to talk about that theory rather than what it contains inside, who uses it, what kind of research has applied it, and so on. Okay, so I hope that helps. All right. Okay, so that is about theory. So I have already shared with you a very important secret. A secret of getting into the top tier ranked journal is to always think about grandiose theory. Don't use middle range theory. Okay, no matter and. Don't use too popular theory. I'm not kidding with you. Few months last year, okay, every year I host a lot of special issue. Okay, last few years, I have hosted mobile payment in International Journal of Bank Marketing. It's an ABDC A rank journal in Emerald. I've also hosted mobile payment special issues in internet research. Is Emerald ABDC A rank journal as well. I've also hosted a special issue in Journal of Business Research. JBR is a ABDC A rank level 3 ABS journal as well in Elsevier. Currently, I'm also running another special issue in Journal of Consumer Behavior. It's a Wiley journal. It's a A rank marketing journal. You see, when I hosted this special issue in Internet Research and International Journal of Bank Marketing on mobile payment, I was so surprised. Why I was so surprised? Because majority of the papers are from India. So I began to realize that mobile payment is a very hot topic in India. But you see, the problem is this. No matter how well you write, out of 10 papers that comes in, okay, let's say it's from India, 6 or 7 papers are using the same theory. And all these theories are popular theories. So what I'm trying to say is that it's very difficult for you to stand out or for you to actually make your work looks different. Because to me, it's almost the same. Your paper, this paper, all of you are using the same theory. That's why I always say, try to avoid popular theory. The more the popular the theory is, the more you should avoid them. Example, technology acceptance model, theory of planned behavior, theory of reason action, and so on. This kind of theory, please don't use it because it is too popular. Okay, no matter how well you write, it's going to be very difficult to survive. I know some people always argue that, hey, I'm using technology acceptance model or theory of reason action, but the past studies have, they are doing on this research. No one has ever used this theory in this new research area. I know you have a certain contribution, but theoretically, you don't contribute anything in terms of knowledge. So please think about use a theory which is not too popular. That would be safer. Okay, so that is about theory. Now discussion of past studies. Past studies is something like what I said. You write about what are the past studies that are related to your topic. So when you write about past study, look at this kind of writing. Tan and all found relational bonds affect intention. Wong found relational bonds have significant relationship with intention and so on. Now this kind of studies, right? Be very honest, it's a very poor writing. Why? Because it tells me nothing. It tells us nothing about this research, except that Tan found this relation. You see, when you write quality top journals, you need to write in depth, not surface. Okay? Not surface means it's not really about how many references you put. It's the quality of your references and the quality of your argument. So in other words, when you write past studies, you should not be choosing multiple studies, multiple papers, and citing them, but you should choose quality papers that are within the conversation of your topic and dive in. Dive in means you explain in detail about that particular studies. Like for example, what's new, what is unexpected, what's their view, what's the limitation of their studies, their methodologies, and so on. Okay, put your own voice, argue what is their limitation of their studies and henceforth. That is a good way of writing past studies, okay, not just surface what A, B, C, D, E is doing. Now, however, I always argue in this way. I understand that, it's easy to say that you should write in depth, but sometimes in journals, journals has word count limits. Some journals, 5,000 words, 6,000 words. How can you write in depth? So I always say that, there should be appropriate breadth and depth. Sometimes you write surface, but sometimes you should write in depth. So that gives people the knowledge of what you are going to argue, okay, or what you want to share. Now, next. This is what I always say. The most biggest weaknesses of research articles, the issue of black box. What is this issue of black box? You see, let me ask you this very simple question, okay? Let me just write it out. Now, let's say, for example, if you say something is useful, okay? Intention for you to adopt something is there. Something is useful, definitely you will have intention to use it. Now, let me ask you, does this relationship sounds logic? Something useful? People will use it. That's now, if I throw you another example. Yeah. Boyfriend and girlfriend, stay together and baby. Would you agree? No. How can boyfriend and girlfriend stay together and suddenly there's baby? Something must happen in between, right? Now, the key thing is this. If you don't agree with this, technically you should not agree with this as well. Because usefulness doesn't directly links to usage. You see, the black box issue is that people assume that usefulness will link directly to intention. Now, this is a very simple example, but in real life, when you do a research, sometimes the variables that you're linking is more complicated. You always assume that the logic goes in this way when you write, but when a person read, it's like, I will be reading like boyfriend, girlfriend, got baby. How does that work? So in other words, it's very important that when you write your paper, you need to explain that process, how this is being linked, so that it gives the reader the picture like, this is how A, B, C, D, E leads to baby. So don't just write usefulness leads to intention. So you need to write in a way like, for example, you talk about mobile shopping. So you say that, oh, mobile shopping is very useful. So for example, when, going to your work, you are in the public transport, you can do shopping, through your phone. So you save time so that when you go home, you have more time with your family, you feel satisfied, your family love you. So you have higher usage to use. That is the kind of process that we want to see when you link your work. Okay, so I hope you understand. Also, this is what we call a black box theory. Let me clear this. Eraser. Clear. Okay. Okay, next. Now, this is what we call a laundry list. I always tell people, this kind of writing, please avoid. Okay, it tells us nothing. My doctorate students like to show me this kind of work. Why? Because they always ask me, Gary, what do you think of this work? So I always say, what do you want me to say? They say that, isn't this a good work? I say, no, it tells me nothing. I only know A, B, C, D, E, F, G, but I don't really know what is the argument about the paper and so on. So in other words, okay, this is what I call a laundry list. It doesn't help a reader to understand anything, and you should avoid citing these kind of references. Now, the good quality papers, okay, top journals, it is not really about the number of your references. Okay, it doesn't mean that you have more references, your work is better. I always say it is the quality of your references that matters, not the quantity of your references. So when you write, you need to choose quality papers and only use quality papers to argue your point. Okay. Now let me give you an example. When I talk about quality, okay, coming back to this, when I talk about quality, remember earlier when I started the part on literature review, I asked you this very simple question. I asked this question. Tell me, okay, let's say you are an expert in communication or you are an expert in marketing. Tell me what are the top 5 journals in your area? Do you know? So if you do not know, how do you know what are these top quality journals? Okay, how do you know? There are a few ranking lists. Okay, one of those ranking lists which are very widely used, popular list is the ABDC ranking. So I think the ABDC, the latest one is 2021, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So you can actually filter, like for example, you go to the website, you can filter based on your area and the rating. So the highest is, of course, is A star, A, B, and C. So you can see, these are A star journals. And so you can see like in information system, you only have 7.52% of A star. So it's very, very difficult. Those A star and A are very, very difficult to publish. Okay. So these are the ABDC ranking. So you can see, you can filter by the category. Yeah, A star, and so on. No, there's also another quality ranking list, which we call it the Academic Journal Guide or the ABS ranking journal. So this ABS ranking journals is widely used in Australia, New Zealand, and so on. The ABDC ranking is widely used in Australian university, New Zealand, and also many Australian universities in Malaysia. We do use ABDC as well. Yeah, like for example, in Malaysia, we have Monash Malaysia, Curtin University Malaysia, Swinburne University Malaysia. They are all using ABDC. Even in my school as well, we also base it on ABDC. Yeah. So if I'm not mistaken, I think even in my car and some of the universities in India, I do know that they are using the ABDC ranking. To be very honest, comparing ABDC and ABS, of course, ABS is much tougher because if you can see the numbers of journals that are listed in ABS is even more limited. Yeah, so for ABS ranking or the Academic Journal Guide ranking, the ranking is based on 4-star, 4, 3, 2, and 1. So some journals, right, those 4-star journals are very difficult to publish. You know, you talk about if you are in information system, yeah, you heard of this journal like MISQ Quarterly. These are what I call the God's journal. You know, only God can publish in those journals. Very difficult. Yeah, those are what 4-star takes you about 3-5 years, you know, to even get your paper published. Yeah, even now, if you talk about even A and A-star journals, easily it takes about 2 years. Yeah, I have so many papers, you know, recently got accepted in A rank or A-star journals. It took us about 2 years to get their papers accepted. Very difficult today. Yeah. So anyway, this is the ABDC ranking. Okay, so you can take a look the category, how many journals are listed in this ABS ranking. Like Taylor and Francis, they have about 253, Wiley, Emerald, yeah, and so on. Okay, so you can take a look. I have provided the list. You can just, you know, search on Academic Journal Guide 20, I think 201, 2021, if I'm not mistaken, and the lists are there. All right. So the key thing that I want to stress is this. When I ask you this question, what are the top 5 journals in your area? You should actually take a look based on the ABS ranking and the ABDC ranking and cite those top journals in your paper. That will give the impressions to the authors, to the reviewers that you actually know your work. All right. Now, there are also other ranking lists which are very popular, and these are the Financial Times list, FT50. Okay, so FT50 is like, it's really difficult to publish. Yeah, so you can take a look. So try to cite them, yeah, in your work. And also, there are also UTD Dallas list. This UTD Dallas list is as difficult as the FT50 because it has only 24 journals. But these are good research. Yeah, you should actually, you know, read this kind of papers, get the ideas. In fact, I always tell people this, because I'm a quantitative researcher. I always tell people, right, if you want to get the best model in the world, never read a poor quality journal, because if you build your model from a poor quality journal, it's like building a house using straws. It's always very shaky. You should always build your model from the top of the top journals. Then the structure is very strong. You know, the theory that you use to support is very unique. You can get through very easily. So bottom line, I always tell even my own PhD student is read good journals. Don't read poor quality journals because you are not going to benefit, you know, in terms of ideas and so on. Because frankly, most of the low rank journals, they write almost the same thing. Theories also, they use almost the same theory. So you duplicate it, you read, even you read 100 papers, you are not going to learn any new things. Yeah. So I'm going to show you an example of a paper written by Dr. Hansela. You see, this is what I want to show you. Look at the references, MISQ, okay? A-star journal. This kind of journal takes you about 5 years to publish. Yeah, it's a very top journal in information system. So you look, psychological methods, okay? Journal of Economy of Marketing Science, European Journal of Operational Research, MISQ, Psychometrica, Journal of, I can't see the word, Journal of Marketing Research, okay? MISQ, Journal of Operation Management, you know, Journal of Academy of Marketing Science, Journal of Academy of Marketing Science again, you know, JBR, you know, long range planning. You see, These are all level 4, level 3, A and A star journal. My point to you is very simple. If I am a reviewer, if I am an editor, when I look at the references, I know this guy knows his work. He has cited the right kind of papers. And to be very honest, these kind of papers are not easy to read because they are usually very lengthy. Yeah, sometimes you can spend a day reading the paper and you don't even know where to cite. Yeah, because it's really very lengthy. Yeah, go and read a MISQ paper, you will understand what I'm trying to say. It's so lengthy. Sometimes you just do not know even where to cite. Okay, so these are quality papers that you should cite, and this is the examples that I gave to you. It's not really about the quantity of your references, but it's really about your quality of your references. And if it's possible, try to cite less. Citing less means that your work is more original. The more references you have, the more it's like you are copying here, copying there, and the work doesn't sound original. So if you look at all those top journals, you realize that the references is shorter, 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 and shorter. You can do an experiment, yeah? You can take a look at Scopus Index Journal, look at the references. Then you look at those SSCI, A rank, A star rank. You see, it's shorter, shorter, and shorter. All right. Okay, I'm not going to talk about methodology. Yeah, because all of us have different ways of running methodology. But very important thing that I need you guys to take note is that regardless whatever methodology that you use, you must always know who are the gurus or who are the expert in your methodology. Okay, and try to look at their work. Okay, try to mimic. Mimic means try to follow as close as possible based on whatever that they are doing. You will never go wrong. Okay. Now next, for quantitative research, we have this thing called discussion. Yeah. So discussion basically is to tell people whether your studies, your finding is supported or not supported, and so on, and also to provide a sort of like an explanation. Why is it supported? Now, this is where I always say that you have to think about creativity. Okay. I remember many years ago, I met with one editor-in-chief, and he told me that, Gary, do you know discussion, is one of the weakest part for most Asian writers. And he said that discussion is the part where it shows the originality of your work. Now, when you write your discussion, you try to offer your explanation. That is where the originality comes from. Okay, how do you explain? Of course, when you want to explain in discussion, you can always come from two perspectives. It can be based on logic, okay? Like logic means that it's really logical, or it could be based on certain past findings and so on. Now, I want to tell you another secret. Okay, another secret. How can you make your discussion go up to another level? Now, imagine you are doing research like Journal of Creative Communication. Yeah. So in order to support your findings in your discussion, you use papers that are related to communication, yeah, to support, or even marketing to support your findings. Think about supporting it from a different perspective or different research area. Think about using psychology journals to support your discussion. See how different it is. That is where you are going to create contribution in terms of knowledge. Rather than saying that how this thing behave in other marketing journals, why not use psychology theories or psychology findings to support your argument? Or maybe think about using cross-culture journals to support why this thing actually happens. Of course, the one that I've just mentioned is possible if you do research related to consumer. If you do research related to organization, it may not be so feasible. But the point here I want to say is that discussion doesn't need to always follow the same path. Like, for example, if you're doing communication, only use communication journals to support. No, you can also use different areas. And that different area is going to make your research stand out. And people will cite your work in the future because it's unique. You're bringing in different perspective to support. All right. And towards the end, towards the end of your research, okay, is basically your contribution. Every research has to have contribution. The normal kind of contribution that most researcher has is always practical contribution, how your study is useful for organization, and also theoretical contribution. How does your studies contribute to your theories, and your and so on. Now, instead of just focusing on managerial and theoretical, let me suggest this to you. Try to include 4 of these: theoretical, managerial, methodological, and social implication. That makes your study has a lot of contribution. It's not difficult. Sometimes, right? If you read good journals, okay, like for example, methodological journals, something that you use often. When you read methodological journals, okay, the way that they describe will make it sound so unique, as if like this is a methodological contribution. So what I'm trying to say that it is not difficult to write. You just need to read the right journals, follow the pattern of writing. You can actually write that out. All right. So this is what I want to suggest for your contribution. Try to write out from a multiple perspective of managerial, theoretical, methodological, and social implication. All right. So I think that's all for today's webinar. So this is now we're gonna move to Q&A. But before that, so this is my profile. Yeah, if you want, you can get in touch with me through Facebook and follow me on Facebook, or through LinkedIn. Search for my name, Gary Tan Wei Han. Okay, so with that, thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gary. So if anyone has questions, feel free to drop it in the chat, and Professor Gary can answer them. Professor Gary, so there's a question in the chat from
Okay, let me have a look.
Anjita. Yeah.
Okay. So, good morning. I'm Prof. Maithil from the School of Media Study and Humanities. Good morning. Good morning.
Not
All right.
that one.
Okay. Anaga, thank you for joining. Okay. We need to get the slide. Yeah, I can share the slide, no problem. Pooja, thanks, Gary. Okay, well said on theory building and grand theorization. Okay, great. Muhammad Jaino, respected organizer, could you please send a recording? Okay. Anaga, hi everyone, the record. Okay. Thank you for sharing. Which format of citation is appropriate to use for the research paper APA 6? To be very frank with you, right, very much depends on the journal, because some journals have different format. Like for example, I publish papers in IEEE Transaction Engineering and Management. They use the IEEE format. Yeah. If you publish in another journal, they will have a different format. The one that I find is the most flexible is Elsevier. Why? Elsevier would say this: when you submit a paper, during your first submission, it doesn't matter whether you're using, whatever format is fine, so long that they are consistent. But if your paper get accepted, then you must follow back their final. If let's say they are using the numbering system, then you need to use a numbering system. If they are using Harvard, if they are using Chicago, or if they are using APA, then you need to follow. That is for Elsevier. So I like Elsevier for that reason. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is that format depends on the journal. You need to read the author guideline to get more information. Okay, Hannah, Anjita. Okay, kindly tell us about ESCI. Should we go for it if it's not indexed in SSCI? ESCI. Let me tell you a joke. Many years ago, I tell you a story. Very interesting. One of my former colleague, told me she is going to apply for associate professor. So at the time, I asked her this question: do you publish many papers in WOS? Oh, she said, yes, I actually publish a lot of paper in WOS. So I asked her this question: can you share the paper with me? So that I can just go through. Just sometimes you want to know what your colleagues is doing so that you can have collaboration. So when she shared the paper with me, I was shocked. Why? Why I got shocked? Because the paper is ESCI. What is ESCI? ESCI means Emerging Source Citation Index. It means this journal has potential to be listed in WOS in the future. Future means when? 5 years, 10 years, we do not know. But it only tries to tell you that this journal has a future. I mean, it has a potential to be listed in WOS, but you do not know when. So frankly, if you ask me, if you talk about the pyramid, that pyramid that I've just shown to you earlier, ESCI is not even at the Scopus level. It's probably at the bottom level. It only tells you that this journal has potential. That's all. It doesn't tell you that this journal is WOS. And you got to be very careful because a lot of people got this assumption. Like, for example, in some university, they said that you need to publish one Clarivate Analytics WOS in order to graduate. And a lot of students assume that ESCI is part of it. Technically, they are not because they are not used for world ranking. World ranking only consider only 4. SSCI, SCI, SCIE, and AHI. Only 4. ESCI is never part of that calculation for world ranking. So sometimes even you publish a lot in this ESCI, you want to apply for promotion for professorship, you may not be able to get it as well because it's not really part of the core WOS. So you need to be very careful. And this year is even more confusing. Why? Because this year, Clarivate Analytics introduced ESCI with impact factor. So a lot of people got, like, hey, there's impact factor. Why it's not? It's different. This year they have impact factor, but it's still not part of the core for WOS. So you got to be really careful of that. It's not even Scopus, to be very frank with you. It only tells you that this journal has potential. That's all. All right. Okay. Other questions?
Always wondered, is it wise to use casual or informal language to some extent while writing a research paper?
Yeah, sorry, I saw a question from Snare. What tools do you prefer in managing references? I use a free one. Cite this for me, free. And then sometimes I use Google Scholar. When you when you go to Google, you type the name of the references, it will appear. And then if you look down, there is like an open and inverted comma. You click there, you can choose APA, Chicago, Harvard. So I use that. So it's free. But I like to use Cite this for me because it's free. Don't have to pay. But it depends on some of you may want to use Mendeley, and so on. Okay, so where's the question again? What was the question that you asked?
I just sent it to you again, sir, but he's asking, is it wise to use casual or informal language to some extent while writing a research paper?
No, you got to write it the formal way. You need to write based on how that journal that you're targeting. Okay, for example, I give you an example. I will not say it's right or wrong. For example, if you are going to submit to a practitioner journal, do you know that there are practitioner journals in this world? So practitioner journals, for example, are like Harvard Business Review. If you read Harvard Business Review, the language, the way that they write is very informal. They don't write like an academic writing. So you know that these are the kind of journals that you're going to target. You need to write in that way. Now, if you're going to submit to an academic journal like JOCC, then definitely you have to write that formal way. You can't escape from it. So my point to you is, look at the journal that you're going to target, okay? You look at the format, how they are written, follow their format. You will never go wrong. So if the journal allows you to be more informal, but it's very unlikely, it's very unlikely, yeah. If you ask my opinion, unless it's a practitioner journals, most journals, they will require you to write in a very formal way. All right. Okay. All right.
Are there any other questions from anyone?
Hi, Prof. Mayang.
Hi, Professor Gary. Glad listening to you.
Yeah. Happy to see you.
I had one follow-up question also, if you like, also to kind of tell the audience about it. And it could be a curiosity. So what I have experienced over the years is that, when we submit for a journal, there is indeed something called scope, aims and scopes of the journals, right? But there are things beyond that which journals probably do not write, right? And perhaps those things are the dispositions to a certain methods, certain epistemological commitments, right? So now we can write as many wonderful papers we want based on the guidelines that you have given, right? But when we submit these things, these unwritten things come into play, the methodological and epistemological dispositions, right? So how do we navigate that, when submitting for a journal?
Okay. Prof. Maya,
Possible that even
yeah.
true, right? So you can comment on that, being an editor there.
Okay, let me, you asked a very important question because I suffered the same thing over the last few years. You see, I remember many years ago, we wanted to submit to one journal. Okay, I forgot, is it something like Journal of Retailing, something like this? So this journal, every time we submit, always get rejected. No matter how well our paper is written, how good, whatever you say, always get test rejected. We always feel very frustrated, like, why this journal is so difficult to publish? Then one day, we work with someone that, that have published in that journal. And then what? We asked him, hey, this work, do you think can get into this particular journal? You know what the guy told me? It will be test rejected. I was like, how do you know it will be test rejected? He said, very simple. The methodology that you use is not what they want. Then I asked him, but you look at the scope, they never mention anything about the methodology. Like, for example, I'm using structured equation modeling. Okay, example, I'm using structured equation modeling. So he told me, the methodology that you use, structured equation modeling, is not going to be accepted. But I said, in the scope, it was never written. Then you know what he told me? Go and download papers from that journal. How many papers structured equation modeling is inside? When I downloaded, oh my God, it's true. The entire journal doesn't have this particular methodology. Then I realized, hey, why is it so weird? Why some journals, they are not accepting this kind of things, but they do not put it up front. I personally, I do not know. Yeah, but I learned from one important lesson from them. In the future, if you want to submit a work to a certain journal, you need to make sure that the kind of work that you do exists in that journal. Okay, that's number one. Number two, the methodology that you're using also exists in that journal. You see, when you do something and you want to submit to the journal, and if that journal itself doesn't have that kind of work, it doesn't mean that, oh, you are the first person that is going to have contribution to that work, or something that, your work is so great, that maybe people have never thought of. It's not that way. It basically means that they are not accepting your work. I learned this because last time I remember I submitted a paper to something related to services. Okay, and we actually do something with mobile payment and services. So we thought that, oh, since I have services, I can submit to a service journal. But when we submitted, someone told me this, it will be rejected. I said, why? He said, because you go and download all the papers inside this journal, there is no paper related to mobile payment. Even though you are doing something related to service, but they have never published a paper with mobile payment. In other words, the chances of you getting in is almost zero. I do not believe, and I submitted, it was test rejected. And it was stated, we do not accept this area. So I learned something from it. So my point to all of you from this webinar today is, if you are going to submit a paper, and if that methods that you're going to use or the kind of areas that you're writing doesn't exist in a journal, it doesn't mean that you are going to contribute. It basically means that they do not want your work. So make sure that this kind of work exists. Not entirely similar, but at least 50% similar. Okay, can I Prof. Maya?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Professor Hari.
Okay.
All right, if there are no more questions, I think we can wrap up today's session. So before wrapping up the webinar, we just wanted to take a moment to thank Dr. Gary Tanway Han. We really, really appreciate that you took time out of your day to conduct this webinar. I also wanted to thank our editorial team over at JOCC, including Dr. Manisha Shalat, Dr. Pooja Thomas, and Mr. Arpit Christian for organizing the session. We're also grateful to the IT team at MICA for their backend support and the design team at MICA for their help in designing the flyer for the session. And finally, we wanted to thank all of you in the audience for joining this session. And we hope that this session was as illuminating for all of you as it was for us. We hope to see you again in the next webinar. And also the recording of this session will be available on our YouTube link if you would like to consult